At exactly 3 p.m., without fail, our dog Max would rush to the baby's room and bark furiously at the floor. It started off as an odd habit, something we laughed about, until the baby stopped smiling, until she started staring at the floor with wide, terrified eyes. Just like Max had started innocently enough, Max, our Labrador, would growl under his breath every day around mid-afternoon. At first, we barely noticed. It was only after 4th or 5th day that the timing caught our attention, always at 3 p.m., on the dot. It didn't matter what we were doing, feeding the baby, cooking, watching TV. Max would stop everything, stand up stiffly, and walk slowly toward the nursery with ears flat and a low rumble in his throat. Then came the barking. It wasn't frantic barking, not the kind dogs do when they see a squirrel or the mailman. This was slow, rhythmic, and full of tension. He would stand just 2 feet away from the crib and stare at the floorboards like he could see through them. The baby, Emma, would go quiet too. At first, she just looked puzzled, maybe a little amused. But by the end of the first week, her expression had changed. Now, every day at 3 p.m., her smile vanished. Her tiny hands would grip the crib's railing, and her eyes, one so full of innocence, would lock onto the same spot Max barked at, and then she would scream. We tried rationalizing it. Maybe there were mice. Maybe old plumbing was rattling beneath the house at the same time every day. Maybe a reflection of light. But Max wouldn't stop barking even after we lifted him away or tried distracting him with treats. It became obsessive. He wouldn't leave the nursery until the clock hit 3:15. By week 2, the tension in the house was unbearable. The minute the clock struck 3, Max would leap up with frightening urgency. My wife stopped putting Emma in the crib altogether. We kept her with us, yet Max still barked at the empty nursery. And somehow, that was even worse. Then one afternoon, while we were all in the living room and Emma had just fallen asleep in her mother's arms, Max sprinted to the nursery before the clock had even turned. He barked louder than ever, snarling, growling, scratching the wood. We rushed in. That's when we saw it. Long, jagged claw marks under the crib. Fresh, as though something had been trying to come up. And Max? He stood guard, shaking, still barking. Still at 3 p.m. Something was waiting under there. And Max knew we couldn't take it anymore. The tension, the barking, the crying. 3 p.m. became a countdown we all dreaded. Even Emma seemed to anticipate it, clutching to her blanket tightly around that hour. Max had turned from a calm, gentle dog into something obsessed and protective, always staring at the same corner of the room. We stopped inviting guests over. We barely slept. One morning, after another night of Emma whimpering in her sleep and Max growling at empty walls, I snapped. I told my wife I was going to rip the floorboards up. If there was something down there, pipes, a raccoon, a nest of rats, we'd find it and get our piece back. She hesitated, nervous about damaging the old rental, but I'd already grabbed my toolbox. I waited until Max began his routine, exactly 3 p.m. I followed him to the room and for the first time knelt beside him. He didn't look at me. He just barked harder, nose pointed down. The floor felt cold, unnaturally cold. I pried up the first board slowly. Dust flew up in thick clouds. Max backed away, pacing nervously. Underneath was nothing, at least not at first. But the deeper I pried, the more strange things I found. There was a tangle of shredded fabric, like a chewed-up old blanket, foul-smelling and damp. Beneath that, twisted in a tight coil, was something that looked like skin. Snake skin, but old, thick, far too thick for any regular snake. I pulled more of it up. It kept going, longer, heavier, and darker, and it stank of mold, musk, and something almost metallic, like blood. Then I saw the grooves, carved into the wood support beams below the house, claw marks, deep and intentional, some of them shaped like spirals, not scratches from panic. Patterns, symbols. I leaned in with my flashlight, and in the far corner, just barely visible through the cracked foundation, I saw movement. Slow, deliberate movement. A shape that coiled tighter the closer the light came. Max growled so violently he nearly bit the edge of the floor. I didn't finish. I sealed the boards back and told my wife to take Emma to her parents, just for a few days. But I knew it wasn't a snake nest. It was a lair, and it wasn't abandoned that night. I couldn't sleep. The thing I saw beneath the crib wasn't just a snake, not in any ordinary sense. It was too large, too still, coiled with purpose. It hadn't flinched from the light. It had watched me. And worse, it had waited. I sat in the living room with Max by my feet, ears up, eyes trained on the dark hallway like he was waiting too. I tried researching mutant snakes, cryptid sightings, old folklore. But nothing I read could explain the patterns carved beneath the house. Nothing matched the smell. The way Emma's behavior had shifted. Then I found something. A short reference in a forgotten blog about womb guardians. Serpent spirits said to sleep under cradles, feeding off infants' energy, biding their time until a child turned 1 year old. That's when they took their form fully. That's when they entered. Emma was 8 months old. The next day, I called animal control. They wouldn't touch it. Too dangerous. The foundation wasn't safe. I offered money. I begged. No one came. So I returned to the nursery at 2:45 p.m., heart pounding. This time, I brought a crowbar, gloves, and a video camera. Max followed, teeth bared. I opened the floor again, deeper this time, shining the flashlight farther. And then I saw it. 2 slits, eyes, reflecting light. Yellow, not blinking. The thing uncoiled. Slowly. The ground shifted as it moved. I dropped the flashlight. Max lunged. I heard him growl, bark. Then yelp. Something thrashed. Wood snapped. I grabbed him and pulled him back just as a long, black-scaled tail slammed against the underside of the floorboards. Not blindly, aimed. It knew where we were. We sealed the nursery. Permanently. I moved Emma's crib to our room. I sprinkled salt, burned sage, even spoke to a priest. Nothing helped. The thing never merged. But at 3 p.m., Max still barked. Not at the room now, but at the wall directly beside our bedroom. It had moved. Or maybe it never needed to, because it was never about scaring us. It wasn't about territory. It was waiting for one thing. Emma's first birthday. And the clock is ticking. Never ignore the instincts of those who can sense what you cannot. Animals, especially those close to us, often perceive dangers we're blind to, whether spiritual, natural, or something far darker. What may seem like strange behavior could be a desperate warning. In a world full of things we don't understand, sometimes the greatest act of protection comes from those who cannot speak, only bark.